Welcome, everyone. I'm really happy to have you here tonight. Welcome to our candidates. I'm Karen Hardy from Leadership Council San Mateo County.
And I'm Petra Silton from Thrive Alliance. Thrive Alliance is a thriving network of nonprofits in San Mateo County, with a leadership organization dedicated to connecting leaders from the business, nonprofit, and government sectors to inspire them to find solutions to some of the biggest issues facing San Mateo County.
Leadership Council San Mateo County is a county-wide, nonpartisan, nonprofit leadership organization. We're dedicated to connecting leaders from the business, nonprofit, and government sectors to inspire them to find solutions to some of the biggest issues facing San Mateo County. So welcome. We'd like to recognize the Thrive Alliance and Leadership Council San Mateo County team members who are involved in preparing for this event. Please wave or stand up. And if you have any questions, these are the people you can seek out. So we have Margie Power, Georgia Farouk, Yahaira Ortega, Karen Hager, Kirsten Scheidek, and Isabella Yee. So thank you to our team. We're proud to host this forum tonight, which is being held at the Menlo Park Council Chambers with an in-person audience. Thank you to the City of Menlo Park for hosting us tonight. Live Spanish translation services are available to those attending in person. This forum may also be viewed in English and in Spanish via Zoom and will be available on YouTube. A recording of this forum will be available after the event via the Leadership Council SMC and Thrive Alliance websites.
To hear this forum in Spanish on Zoom, you'll click on the globe icon on the right-hand side. En español. Para escuchar este foro en español, haga clic en el icono de globo a la derecha. To ensure that our Spanish language interpreters have time to interpret, we ask that individuals speak clearly and at a moderate pace. We will also provide a brief pause between answers to allow the interpreters to finish their interpretation. On Zoom, to turn on real-time transcription, click the More button on the bottom right to enable the live transcript. We're going to start with a land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that our offices and services operate on the ancestral home of the Ramaytush Ohlone tribes, past and present. We honor with gratitude the land itself and the people who have stewarded it throughout the generations. As organizations that are dedicated to advancing equity, practicing empathy, and understanding each other's differences, we aspire to show appreciation, respect, and concern for all connected to this land. We also acknowledge our committed relationship to Indigenous peoples, and we gratefully recognize our history. For those attending in person, please silence your phones. The purpose of this candidate forum is to allow all the candidates running to represent District 4 on the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors the opportunity to introduce themselves to voters and answer questions regarding issues of importance to the community they represent. It's also an opportunity for the candidates to learn more about the community's concerns. The term in office is 4 years. Voting starts February 5th and ends March 5th. The top 2 vote getters will move on to the general election in November. If one candidate receives 50% plus 1 of the vote, there will be no election in November. That person just wins that seat. This is a nonpartisan event which aims to provide voters with information from the candidates that they can make informed decisions when voting. Therefore, we ask the in-person participants to keep all expressions of support or opposition quiet for today's forum in order to allow each candidate to equally and fairly express their views.
All right, we'd like to begin by welcoming our candidates. We'll welcome them by alphabetical order. We have Paul Bocanegra, we have Celeste Brevard, Maggie Cornejo, Lisa Gauchier, and Antonio Lopez. Each candidate has 2 minutes for an introductory statement. Candidates will be given notice at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and at stop. When you see the stop sign, please complete your sentence and end your remarks. Candidates are required to end the remarks at the end of the time. In order to decide the speaking order for this evening, candidates' names were drawn at random in advance using the Secretary of State's randomizing tool to determine the speaking order. You are seated in the speaking order and we'll let you know who is going to begin the next round. At the request of the candidates, we will be using their first names this evening. Prior to the evening, constituents were given the opportunity to submit questions via our registration page. These questions were reviewed by Thrive Alliance and Leadership Council San Mateo County and were consolidated by common themes. Community members and nonprofit leaders will be asking the questions this evening. So just as a reminder, the candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to the question. Only one of the questions this evening, given our time constraints, will have a 30-second rebuttal time. There will also be 2 lightning rounds. The moderators will make it clear before each question the time allotted, the order you'll be speaking in, and whether rebuttal time will be allowed. So let's begin. So question 1, each candidate, well, this isn't the question, this is your introduction. So each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, and we'll be starting with Antonio tonight.
It's gonna be tough. Good evening, everybody. Can y'all hear me? Yes. Okay, fantastic. And I'm gonna do my best to be moderate today. So my name is Antonio Lopez. I'm proud to be this year's mayor for the city of East Palo Alto, born and raised in East Palo Alto, been on the city council for 4 years. My story in politics isn't traditional. For me, my love was poetry, literature, but in 2020, when the pandemic occurred, and we all know how devastating that was, the black bags, the furniture, the people being displaced, for me, that's what drove me into politics. I received my education after I left 18. First, my family to go to college. I went to Duke for my undergraduate. I went to Rutgers for my MFA, Oxford as a Marshall Scholar, proudly representing this United States. And again, in 2020, really wanted to step up and make a difference. Since 2020, I'm being proud to serve on the City Council alongside my dear colleague, Ms. Lisa Gaucher. I serve on a number of boards, including the Bay Area Water Conservation, which helps negotiate the water that we use today. El Concilio of San Mateo County, which provides resources and support for our families who struggle. One of the things I'm fighting for tonight, I want to just give some facts throughout my talk, is our low-income families in this county spend 14% on their diapers. So think about that. Think about how expensive things are. Think about how difficult it is for our families, and we need somebody who's going to really be able to get in there with experience, elected experience. I've also worked for State Senator Josh Becker, making sure that the Latino community, Muslim community, veteran community, that those folks who've been in the shadows for too long, District 4, have adequate representation. With that, I'm going to yield my time. Thank you for being so patient. I hope your families are staying safe for this storm. Let's get your sandbags out, monitor the weather, and I look forward to the conversation.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Cornejo, and I grew up in District 4. I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and I've personally experienced a lot of the challenges that our District 4 residents are facing and continue to face. I was born in North Fair Oaks, the unincorporated area of District 4, and I currently live in Redwood City. I'm a renter in Redwood City. I've experienced some of the disparities that our underserved community face, and have seen how those disparities have remained after COVID-19. I have experience working at the County of San Mateo. I've worked at the County of San Mateo for nearly a decade. I used to be a legislative aide for this district, District 4, serving the community, which equips me with the background, relationships, and policy expertise to deliver. I am committed to working on housing for all, public safety, combating climate change, and investment in our children and families in order to move the needle forward. I look forward to your questions, and I am committed to being the best supervisor that I can be for District 4.
Good evening. Thank you for being here, and thank you for those who have put this event together. My name is Lisa Gaucher, and I am running to be the next Board of Supervisors for District 4. I'm a longtime resident of the community. My family moved to East Palo Alto in 1967, and so I've been in the county that long. I was first elected to office in 2012 after being encouraged by my daughter to do so. I have served as mayor and vice mayor 3 times each, and glad to have had the opportunity to sit in that leadership role within our community those times. So 6 years of my 11 years that I've been on council, I've been in the leadership role. In addition to being an elected official, I have a job that I call my mortgage paying job, where I am the Senior Vice President of Inclusion and Belonging with the Silicon Valley Leadership Group, The Silicon Valley Leadership Group is a leading business association representing businesses in the innovation economy. Where on this job, I represent companies when it comes to policy and workforce development, education, racial justice and equity, and health, with a focus on health equity and healthcare innovation. In addition, I sit on regional boards and nonprofits. I'm currently the board chair for the Health Trust, where we work on health equity. I'm also a trustee for the College of Notre Dame, which is right around the corner. I also sit as the board chair for Live in Peace, where we're working with youth who would not otherwise graduate from high school. They're graduating from high school, they're going to college, and they're getting careers. I also sit on the San Mateo County emergency team. I am a founding member of One Shoreline, where we're addressing the critical needs of sea level rise. I am running today to be the voice for everyone. I'd like to be the supervisor for all. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you all for coming out tonight, and thank you to everybody who put this on. This is fabulous. I feel like I'm back at the United Nations. We have the lovely microphones and the translation services. So my name is Celeste Brevard. For those of you who don't know me, I'm running for this position because I have a vision for our community, one that is rooted in sustainability and affordable housing and thriving, equitable community for all members of our society. I see thriving educational institutes where our youth can grow and learn in safe spaces. And I see open communication between our elected officials and those in the wider community. Over the past 10 years, I've had the privilege of working for various international organizations, including the United Nations, where I learned global perspectives that I was able to take to local businesses, nonprofits, and higher educational institutes. In those positions, I oversaw teams of various sizes, created thriving partnerships, managed budgets, and crafted policy on complicated issues. I am running because I am confident that those skills are necessary for the person in this position to thrive, and because I would like to see more innovative solutions to the issues that are currently facing our community. Lastly, I am running because for too long, this process has been too mysterious to those of us in the community, and those who have wanted to affect real change have felt that these types of positions were out of reach. So it is my hope that by running myself, I can make this a more transparent process and get more people involved in our democracy and encourage more people to run for office themselves. Thank you so much, and I hope to tell you more about myself through the questions that we answer this evening. But if you have more information that you're looking for, visit celestebrevard.com and we can continue this dialogue. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Paul Bocanegra, and I am here to ask for your vote and also to share a little bit about myself. I like to look at myself as an agent of change, and I'll get into that as we move deeper into this forum. But I am also a co-founder and youth outreach manager of an organization, Re-Evolution, that works with system-impacted youth, as well as adults that were impacted as youth, now returning and reintegrating back into our community. I'm a juvenile justice and delinquency prevention for the County of San Mateo, where I partner and work with probation to ensure that they are functioning well and that our youth are receiving all of their constitutional needs and basic needs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I'll get into that later as well. I represent change here. I'm not cut from the same fabric. I am involved in politics because politics is what saved my life. In a cage, condemned for 25 and a half years was some of the adversity that I faced. Not only the assimilation, but the son of immigrants. My mother was born in Baxter County on the side of a cotton field. As I sit here, I am shining hope for all those who have been system impacted and all those that believe that they have been treated unfairly, as well as hope for those that don't come from the cloth of politics. This is ordinary people bringing ordinary policies, ordinary visions. I believe that we have allowed experienced politics to run our county, and we're at the situation where we're here today to discuss solutions to many of the problems that have been created by past elected officials, and we hope to resolve these problems so our youth can thrive rather than solve our problems that we're walking into today. Thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you all. Okay, we'll have our first question of the evening. It is going to be asked by Nuestra Casa, if you'd like to come up. You each have 90 seconds to reply. There will be no rebuttals to this question, and the order will begin with Maggie.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Claudia Nava, and I'm a program coordinator at Nuestra Casa in East Palo Alto. Nuestra Casa, for those of you who don't know, work with frontline community members in Bellhaven, East Palo Alto, North Fair Oaks, and Redwood City. We work to ensure that our community members' basic needs are being met, but also work to elevate their voices, especially as it pertains to environmental justice issues. We know that a lot of our constituents are currently facing the disproportionate impacts of climate change, including but not limited to excessive heat, poor air quality, and flooding. So my question today for all of you is, what are some of the environmental justice priorities you will move forward during your time in office? And how will you engage local community-based organizations to help inform your efforts? Thank you.
Well, thank you for that question and for all the work that you do. As a legislative aide, I had the privilege to work closely with Nuestra Casa, and you guys do so much for the community. So like I mentioned, one of my priorities is to address some of the climate change impacts that it has in the district and in the county in general. There's a lot of families that live in excessive heat, and seniors, especially during summer. I used to live in a unit in Redwood City where the heat was just unbearable, and there were children living in these units and overcrowding, and nobody would speak up because I think they were in fear, or maybe they thought there was no resources out there. As supervisor, I really want to dedicate some of the Measure K funding in order to find these cooling places, not only for seniors or families, but just in general for the community. And also, since we have a storm coming, a lot of that happens to impact a lot of the mobile home areas in the district with flooding. And with that, we need to make sure that we're partnering with our nonprofit organizations, but also One Shoreline, who does great work to make sure that we're addressing these issues to help people not have the impact that it has been having for years. And as supervisor, I'm committed to addressing that immediately. It's been way too long where residents are going through this. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So as a council member in the city of East Palo Alto, we have been impacted by flooding. In '98, the Gardens area flooded. In 2012, the Gardens area flooded. So through the work with the San Francisco Creek JPA, we worked with regional bodies and with the cities that are nearby to construct a flood wall that protected the city of East Palo Alto, the Gardens area, from a 100-year flood, meaning that members in that community, and I live in that community, my flood insurance was reduced. But not only that, the things that are going to be important when it comes to climate, how are we going to really tell the community about REACH codes? REACH codes will help to eliminate the gas that we're using and create a better environment. Sea level rise is going to be important. Wildfires are important. And working with organizations such as yours and making sure that social justice is front and center and we're having those conversations, that's what you can count on me to do, to continue to work with these organizations. Again, I'm a founding member for One Shoreline to ensure that sea level rise is going to be taken care of, flooding is going to be taken care of, and we're also looking at the wildfires. We know that during COVID, when we had wildfires, the air was not a good quality. And lastly, we need to make sure that we have good drinking water. Everybody deserves to have good water coming through their pipes into their homes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your question, and thank you, Nuestra Casa, for coming out. It's lovely to see you all tonight. So what some of my colleagues have said is true, but There's actually a study that's being done, and it shows that 57% of people who are asked feel that their government is not doing enough aligned with climate science on this topic. So this is very important, and it touches a lot of different areas. In terms of poor air quality alone, the wildfires do impact the air quality, so much so that we've just recently found out that there's metals that are released during the wildfires that can actually cause carcinogenic impacts on communities. So those who are already suffering the most are going to continue to suffer the most. So we definitely need to work on various things like flooding, sea level rise, but we need to be working to create more green spaces as well for community members, because that can help mitigate things like urban heating. We also need to make sure that we're getting resource information out there to those who need it the most in the languages that it will resonate with them. And we need to increase our transportation systems and make them electric as well, so that these community members, when their houses are too hot, can get to safe spaces. And we need to also make sure that this is a part of every single policy that we're looking at. It needs to be a part of housing. It needs to be a part of transportation. And we need to be looking at this more holistically. What we're doing now is not going to help mitigate this problem, and much more needs to be done. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. I'll just get right to it. The number one polluter here is emissions in the Bay Area region. 30% is transportation. We need a program that is going to impact all of the ordinary people, specifically the people that pay taxes, business owners, and people who ride their bicycles to work. We need to be creative now. We're past readiness for climate change. We're experiencing it. We have an atmospheric river coming in tomorrow that I'm preparing for at our house in Redwood City. We can't continue to put this on the back burner. We really need to start addressing transportation. And many of our underserved community members can't afford a hybrid or an electric car. So we have to start thinking a little bit more creatively. These workers, if they ride a bike to work, they should receive some sort of tax break or some sort of bonus. Small businesses have to be more creative, and big business, you have the equity and you have the finances to make this happen. You have to do your fair share and be the front runner in creating these programs that get our people off the streets. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. Let me just use my 10 seconds to give a shout out to Nuestra Casa. They did an excellent study on the water perception in East Palo Alto, and over 60% of the community still use bottled waters. There's more to the issue, but perception is so important and data is so important. When I first ran for city council in 2020, we had no idea how many families were being vacated. So when government does not have the information to assess the issue, then we're in deep trouble. That's why it's so important to have nonprofits like the ones today. It's not going to be a silver bullet, y'all. We have from the big picture to the massive infrastructure project of the Tidal Lagoon that's going to be hugging the San Francisco Bay to protect us from sea level rise, but also canopy coverage. Did you all know that East Palo Alto only has 14% canopy coverage? Palo Alto has about 40 plus, Menlo Park 30. So it's going to be a multitude of resources. It's going to help us to get across the finish line. To Mr. Bocanegra's point, how do we work with Menlo Spark, other organizations, to increase the rebates for folks to be able to buy hybrids, right? How do we work to create transit stations like in Redwood City to create easy commutes and protected bike lanes? The key is it's not going to be one solution. And I think it's going to be a partnership with the nonprofit sector, with government, with the state, trying to get more funding for these rebate programs. And the fact is, we have to continue to work within these sectors because there's money to be had, money to be made. And that's why it's so critical to have representation at these positions when it comes to sea level rise. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I guess I'll back away. So our next question is from the Bellhaven Community Action Development Fund. You have 90 seconds to reply, and there'll be no rebuttals for the question, and we will start the answer with Lisa.
Hello, I am Marlon Santoyo, and I'm with Bellhaven Empowered and also the Bellhaven Community Development Fund. So at the fund, our goal is to engage the community in decision making through resources and information sharing. That includes training and discussions, and both organizations collaborate to help demystify government by increasing awareness and understanding of these processes to motivate and support residents, raising their voices and affecting change. So in a supervisorial district that includes communities like the Bellhaven neighborhood in Menlo Park, North Fair Oaks, East Palo Alto, and others, which have historically been excluded from engaging in policy decisions and planning processes that have disproportionately impacted our health and well-being, how would you address voter turnout and apathy in our district that has historically been extremely low turnout? Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Part of it is having people see themselves in the process. Many times people don't see themselves, they don't feel like they're being heard, they don't feel like they're being represented. So how do we talk to residents? It's getting into the community and making sure we're having dialogue with all communities, not just one community, but it's when it comes to voter turnout, when I'm walking, I'm talking to residents. How do we get in front of nonprofits? How do we get in front of community members to make sure that they are aware that their vote matters? People need to feel like their vote is going to matter and it is important in the process. So as I said, I've been walking and knocking on doors and talking to people, talking about the election process. It is important. We need to get more people registered to vote. How do we engage young people so that they understand that their voice matters and that they can vote as well? That is going to be important in the process. I know that during COVID, our communities were left out of conversations. That can't happen again. So ensuring that we're having culturally competent conversations and that we're including everybody at the table, that is going to be important. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. I actually live in North Fair Oaks, and that's one of the reasons why I'm running. We don't have a lot of representation, and it does say Menlo Park in my address, but I do live right across the street from the North Fair Oaks Community Playground, so I am definitely a part of that community as well. Another problem, aside from the ones that Lisa has already mentioned, is that many people in our community can't legally vote. So we're not going to be able to hear those voices just by relying on that process. So definitely getting out and speaking to the community members, but also creating surveys and creating platforms in which they can share the information and what's important to them directly. There's something called Civic Bell that I'm a big proponent of, and I think it should be implemented in more places. It's almost like Nextdoor, but it's for your elected representatives so that you can speak directly to those elected representatives. You can have polls that people can answer outside of the normal voting process. And I think that's very important as well. And I also think getting, again, the information across to the different community members in the languages that they speak and having them answer those questions in the languages that they're comfortable with is where you're going to get the most information from them as well. So I think definitely creating programs where you can have language salons to bridge that gap, and working with the various nonprofits and organizations in those communities to have really open dialogue about what's going on in those communities and making sure that their voices are heard. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Great question. It's discouraging here in San Mateo County for the impoverished. Last week, we passed a resolution. Fourth district initiated a resolution to begin criminalizing the impoverished. If you can't afford $3,500 to $5,000 rent, you're gonna get 2 strikes, and then you're gonna get locked up. Who's flipping the bill for that? Taxpayers. The underserved here continue to be impacted by these policies and resolutions that are passed by people who are disconnected from those of us who have to work 2 to 3 jobs to be able to sustain ourselves here in San Mateo County. The haves and the have-nots are growing at an alarming rate. We have over 30 kids attending school at Kennedy Middle School from vehicles. With so much equity, how is it possible that we're able to allow these kids to attend our schools and attempt to learn algebra at the same rate as someone who's living in a $2 million home. These systems are imbalanced. They're disconnected from what we go through in these impoverished communities. And I think that this is why we need to elect change now. Things are not getting any easier if you are poor or middle class. Thank you.
So from people's conversations with me, you can tell I'm a glass half full kind of guy. But in East Palo Alto, we weren't always glass half full, right? Look, with all due respect to electeds, to people on the dais, to answer the question very candidly, the GOTV is not going to happen on a table. It's not going to happen in a diet. It's going to happen in the parking lot. It's going to happen in the churches. It's going to happen in the cookout. It's going to happen where the kids are lighting fireworks in Redwood City and talking to them about, hey, do you know there's an election? Oh, what? When I ran for office in 2020, my cousins, my kids didn't know what a measure was. They didn't know who the vice president was. And the mistake isn't to say you're wrong or to educate yourself. It's telling them what a vice president does, what Measure W does to bring in $591 million for our school district, to tell them that when young people knock on a door, I don't care if you're white, black, red, Greek, cucumber, people listen. And people want to believe in young people and folks who, to your point, are disfranchised. So if we want to get people to be part of the civic process, yes, representation is great. But if we're just wearing suits and we're not reinventing how we engage, then we're not going to actually tangibly move hearts and minds. We have to go where people are at, in their homes, in their parlors. And that is going to be a place where people are open to be honest and be frustrated. Like, this is why I didn't vote, whether it's in the Middle East or because when I was helping out with the issue of speed bumps in Kavanaugh, people wanted something as simple as signage because we lost one individual through a car accident, right? People want to feel that we're pressing the flesh and talking to them. That is how we're going to bring more folks out to vote. Full stop.
One of the things I'm really proud of is understanding my community and the community engagement that I've done throughout my career. And through this campaign, some of the people that have donated to my campaign are first-time donors ever in any kind of civic engagement. And I've heard from them that they will be participating in a local election for their first time. So that, to me, it shows me that it works to go to the community and talk to them. And it's because I've been there talking to them door to door, communicating, connecting, but also educating them on what this process even means. Like, what does it mean to be a supervisor? How does that impact their everyday life? As supervisor, I will make sure that I'm focusing on offering citizenship classes, not in North Fair Oaks and unincorporated areas in our neighboring cities, as well as making sure also that there's residents out there that perhaps are undocumented, but have a pathway. And they don't know that because they're too afraid. So having that education, really being the kind of supervisor that is boots on the ground, is what is expected from me. Thank you.
And then, oops. Thank you so much for the question, and thank you for your answers. The next question is going to be from Housing Leadership Council, and again, and as well as from the San Mateo Tenant Protection Coalition. So you'll have 90 seconds to answer, no rebuttals. And we are starting with Celeste.
Hello, thank you all for being here. My name is Paola Arellano Rosales, and I'm an organizer with the Housing Leadership Council, that is a nonprofit dedicating to advocating for the development and preservation of affordable housing across San Mateo County. So every day, people are forced out of the county because of high cost of living, including my own family, who was displaced from Redwood City about 3 years ago, which is where I lived for about 3/4 of my life. And it's not just my family. Every day, people in San Mateo County are threatened with eviction for arbitrary reasons. People are being forced to live in subpar conditions, in homes that are uninhabitable, overcrowded, and far too expensive. And most renters are afraid to seek help and request repairs because of retaliation. Thank you. And there are significant numbers of people being evicted via renovictions, which is an excuse commonly used by landlords to evict tenants to make renovations, which a lot of the time, those renovations are not even made. HLC is a member of the San Mateo County Anti-Displacement Coalition, which consists of housing advocates, legal aid, and community organizations throughout San Mateo County. We work together to create and advocate for progressive policy change that protects our most vulnerable community members. Evictions lead to homelessness, and so the purpose of anti-displacement is to keep people housed. The question from the coalition is, what policies would you prioritize to prevent evictions and forestall the displacement of lower-income families from San Mateo County?
Thank you so much for the background information and for the question. I really appreciate that. So I actually just recently went to an event about the Fair Housing Ordinance that the Faith-Based Action Group is working on in Redwood City, exactly about these types of issues. And it was very enlightening to see the types of situations that people are living in and the type of treatment that they receive. So as your supervisor, I would support measures like this that would really focus in on what type of treatment a tenant can receive and really focus in on policies that would put limits on how much rent can be increased, would give tenants first right to move back into their homes after the renovations are completed, and a whole slew of other things where we would work with the community. And I have a whole list here of different nonprofit groups that are working on housing in the area. And what I would really like to do is get together with all of these different organizations and truly hear what the biggest problems are for them, just aside from what I've already learned about these community members, so that we can create really strong policies to protect these tenants. Because you shouldn't have to leave where you've lived your whole life just because it gets more expensive. So we need to be working on that. We obviously, there's going to be rebuttal about making sure we protect the landlords and we make sure that the economy is protected. And that's something that I think we can do in tandem with making sure that we're protecting these families. And we definitely need to be providing the resources again for legal aid and things like that more broadly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that great question. We'll start off with rental registry. I think we need to create a task force that comes and provides oversight over the rental associations committees, because right now what we witnessed with the mass shooting at Half Moon Bay, you are criminalized today if you are poor or if you're living in a tent. By God, if you provide conditions that they were providing to our immigrant communities in Half Moon Bay, you should be criminalized as well. And if I'm elected Board of Supervisors, that's the first thing that we're going to work on, is creating a task force that comes to investigate and supervise how our community are living within these apartments. The other thing that I would advocate for is I would advocate against the eviction of youth and senior citizens. The fastest growing displaced population right now is our senior citizens. They're receiving reverse mortgages to be able to continue to live here in Redwood City and EPA, where they lived their entire life. We continue to raise taxes. We just had our taxes raised with our sewer this year. Seniors cannot continue to be bled out with taxes, and we cannot continue to allow our underserved and our voiceless to live in the conditions that we were permitting them to live in up in Half Moon Bay. So as a supervisor, I will ensure that we have more protections against evictions of children, senior citizens, and if you are exposing the community to those living conditions that we were in Half Moon Bay, you will be criminalized. Thank you.
Microphone, we're getting an echo on the Zoom, so if you can just speak a little further back. Thank you.
A lot of great things have already been said. I think we have to take a step back and think, what are our values as a county? Like, what do we value? Do we want people to not drive 2.5 hours? There are people leaving their house in Manteca at 5 a.m., janitors, women who work at Meta, and they come back home at 10 p.m. Like, to me, that is one of the biggest ecological disasters we have in this county. And we just, to Paul's point, we normalize it. Look, I fundamentally believe housing is the civil rights issue of our time. 100 years ago, it was the color line, right? W. Du Bois said it. It is now the red line. The legacies of blockbusting and Jim Crow and everything you said is absolutely on point. Look, we're going to need to be aggressive and look up and down the state. We have the BAFA, Bay Area Housing Finance Authority. It's going to offer $20 billion, 9 countywide agency to be able to lower the threshold to 55% so we can pass more affordable housing. It's going to take like Projects Home Key, converting it to homelessness and working with cities to figure out, okay, what are those facilities that work? But look, here's the bottom line. We all have to agree that we all have to do our part. East Palo Alto is 2.5 square miles. Bellhaven, it's a small part of it. We all have to put in our work and put our RINA numbers and build housing across all units, including the missing middle. Otherwise, good intentioned engineers who make 80 to 120% are going to push the working poor. And they're not going to be able to afford the market rate. So it's going to take a whole slew of policies, but at heart, it's about protecting our tenants, protecting the most vulnerable, and passing policies that can really move the needle.
Sorry. One of the first apartments that I moved to on my own was an apartment that was a great price and a 1-bedroom, and everything was great. Then a couple months went by, and then I saw a full pest infestation, and I thought it was just me. However, then I started asking the other family members, and everybody had been experiencing that for years. There was a family that lived there for 14 years and had 2 children and a baby. I had to advocate for that it was like 8 units because people were afraid to advocate for themselves because of the eviction. As supervisor, I would like to set aside some investments to partner with legal aid to help us fight these cases where some tenants are too afraid or want to voice it, but we could have them voice these concerns with legal aid, and also making sure that we pass this tenant protection ordinance so that we can protect our most vulnerable members and nobody is afraid to voice their concerns or afraid to be evicted.
Thank you for the question. East Palo Alto has been the poster city for creating rent stabilization and tenant protections and ordinances that are helping to protect our most vulnerable residents. We need ordinance on the Board of Supervisors that will help with rental assistance. Sometimes it takes your car breaking down or something in the household that can make a difference. And then addressing Costa-Hawkins. We know that with Costa-Hawkins, what has happened in the housing market, once somebody leaves, that unit that was at a rent stabilized area goes up to market rate. So how do we protect more of those? Then also, I think what's going to be important is how do we create the jobs that will allow people to stay in their region, that they'll make a living wage that will allow them to stay here. But really, it's building protections around our residents and rent control, rent stabilizations, and those programs are what's going to be most needed.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all. Okay, so now we have our first lightning round. We're going to have one more serious question and then a few lighter questions. You're going to have 30 seconds to respond to each. And the order, we're going to begin with Paul for this question. So the first one is, please, again, 30 seconds, please state your position on independent oversight of the Sheriff's Office.
Yes, independent oversight means partnering and trusting in the public and in your community. What our supervisors passed was not public, was not independent. It was only an advisory committee. If you trust your community, if you trust your public, you will partner with your public and give the public the trust that they can uphold accountability within our Sheriff's Department. Thank you.
I'd like to second Paul's motion. Absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, this country was built on checks and balances. If one community is usurping that, God forbid if there's a tragedy, we need to have the subpoena power and the mechanism, again, God forbid, to do that. I'm strongly in support of it. It is not a personal attack on any individual. It is about creating the structural change so no more Black and brown people are suffering in this community when it comes to police deaths. Thank you.
I support the decision that the Board of Supervisors came with creating this commission. I support the unity between the Sheriff's Office and the Board of Supervisors in order to move us forward. I think Sheriff Christina Corpus has proven to do a great job. She knows our community and she's working really well with our community. And I think that with her partnership with the CARES program and now this new commission, we'll really be headed in the right direction. And yeah, that's where I stand. Thank you.
So yes, on the oversight board, I support the decision, and I'm glad that there is an opportunity to go back and look at it and reevaluate. I think we need to give it an opportunity and see what happens. Now, I agree that every organization needs transparency. So from the police department and any other government, there should be transparency. As a mother of a young African-American child, he's a young man now who has had his share of issues. At one point, my son asked me, why did God make me Black? Because of the issues that he's had with the police department. We need to make sure that there's transparency when it comes to our officers.
I do support oversight. Again, I don't think it's about basically looking at somebody's job. To me, it's really about building trust between the police force and the community members. And I think that that's a great way to start that process. I also think that there's more that we can do in terms of programming and partnering with the sheriff's office and the police force to really build that trust between the community so that the police are in a better position out there and doing their jobs, and that the community members feel really protected and safe with those people in the community as well. Thank you.
Favorite memory in District 4? And we're going to begin with Antonio.
Man, my mom does Zumba. Hold on, wait for it. Wait. I'm already in the bad start. There's this lovely dancer named Corina, and I remember my mom when she was just going through sorry, mama. She was going through some depression, right? And so she needed something to really get back off her feet. And Corina Patino, in her little Zumba class in North Fair Oaks, lifted her spirit. It's all these amazing Latina women just having a great time. And that's the kind of community I want to preserve in this district.
I have so many because I was born in District 4. So how do I pick, right? I'm going to pick a memory from my childhood. I grew up in Semicircular next to Garfield. If you guys are familiar with that, you'll know what I'm talking about. One of my favorite memories was all the kids there. We had no phones, no iPads, barely had a TV. We would go out and play until the street lights would come on, and then you would hear your mom or your dad yelling your name. But we would walk all the way to Jack in the Box under the 5th Avenue underpass that now has all of this beautiful mural, but back then had nothing. So then we would get tacos and come back.
I too have a lot of great memories, but I think one that stands out to me, I don't know if you all remember Castle Golf and Games that was in Redwood City, where families could go and play. You know, we removed that and there's a jail there. So that is where you could take your family and you could spend time with your family. It shows where our values are. How are we incorporating and supporting our youth? We need more programs in more places like Castle Golf and Games and Malibu Grand Prix where we can all have a good time.
I think that when I first heard this question, my mind immediately went to Red Morton Park. And so it wasn't so much just one memory, but a place, because my husband and I take our dog over to Red Morton Park every chance that we can get to go walk around, see all of the wonderful people in the community just living their best lives. You have the pub in the park, you have the Shakespeare in the park. So really just being able to get together with community members there has really been joyful for me and my family.
Yes, I have several memories as well with my community, but one of my favorite memories is this past Easter. My family came from Sacramento, from Tracy, my nieces and nephews, from Daly City, and we had a lot of community there as well. And we celebrated my birthday as well as Easter, had an Easter egg hunt together at Red Morton Park. And it really made me feel very good to see my family and the next generation coming up behind me thriving and enjoying what we bring here in San Mateo County. We not only provide this to our county, but also our neighbors and extended family members. Thank you.
Okay, what is your favorite lunch spot?
I'm going to ask again that you don't get too close to the microphone because it's echoing in the recording.
Oh, thank you. Okay, what is your favorite lunch spot in District 4, and what do you order? And we are beginning with Maggie.
In District 4, there's so many again. So I'll just go with, this person is no longer there, but often going to El Paisano was one of my favorites. I would get el filete de pescado, and it was very tasty. It was by a business owner named Juvenal, who unfortunately sold the place after COVID. But he was super impactful and influential, and every time that my dad would get out of work and he'd pick me up from school, we'll go to El Paisano.
This is a tough one. I mean, because there's so many nice places. But there's a Chinese restaurant, Yat Sing, that was in Marsh Manor. Now they're still on Woodside. And I love to go and order the honey walnut prawns, combination fried rice, and of course, fried wontons. Just was there this weekend.
I know. I'm looking at my husband. I'm like, oh gosh, what do I do? There's too many. But I'm going to go with Crouching Tiger because it's currently in my fridge. And so we always get scallion pancakes, and we get our spicy eggplant and our soup and our spicy boiled fish. And now we just give the phone number and they say, oh, Mike.
Yes, there's so many that we have, but I'm a big-time 49er fan, Go Niners. So anyone who's a 49er fan loves to eat at the Canyon Inn up there on the mountain in our neighborhood. You can't go wrong with one of those sloppy burgers, juicy fries. That's my spot. Thank you.
I gotta have to break the rules on this one. There's the pollo al vapor on Middlefield when you barely, you know what I'm talking about? Where you just hit your nose right off of Garfield. Oh, that's so good. And you got Roro's and Pulgas right by my house, nice ribs, John's fish and chips. I mean, that's not a fair question. That's hard. I need someone else to answer this question. But those are the top of my head. They're all just so good. I love our people are beautiful, y'all.
I hope everyone was taking notes. Okay, this one's easy, or maybe not. Warriors, 49ers, or Giants? And we're starting with Lisa.
Neither. I am a Raider fan. So Raiders all day, every day.
At least you know you can trust her. I'm going to go 49ers because it drives me crazy when Stephen Curry just chews on his mouth guard on the court.
I already said it, 49ers.
Celeste, I take offense. I be chewing on a pen all my city council meetings. Dub Nation all the way, y'all. I mean, the way that Steph Curry and Clay have revolutionized the game with three-pointers, it's like they redefined basketball. All right.
I would say the 49ers and the Warriors, and then the Giants could be last for me.
There we go. We ranked them. So we want to make sure you can see enough personality as well as talk about difficult issues tonight. So thank you all. So the next question is going to be asked by the North Fair Oaks Community Association. And this question will allow time for rebuttal. Each candidate will have 90 seconds to respond. And then once everyone has answered, you will each be allowed 30 seconds in rebuttal. And we'll begin this question with Celeste. North Fair Oaks.
Good evening, and thank you for the courage to run. I really appreciate it. My name is Ever Rodriguez, and I am a resident of the community of North Fair Oaks, council member for that council, and president of the North Fair Oaks Community Alliance, Enfoca. My organization is a grassroots organization doing advocacy, program implementation, and unification in a predominantly Latino community next to some of the wealthiest cities in the nation. As such, life is quite difficult for folks who experience high rents and high living expenses under insufficient salaries. Paul, I just gave a personal example. So there is an exodus in our communities, communities like mine, due to this housing issue. With this problem as a background, recently the new San Mateo County ordinance called Hopeful Horizons, Empowering Lives, beautiful title, by the way, has been put forth by our current supervisors. This ordinance, if implemented, will allow authorities to charge a person living in an encampment or in a public property in an unincorporated county only to charge them with a misdemeanor after receiving 2 written warnings and 2 offers of declined shelter. My question for you tonight regarding this ordinance is the following. Do you believe this is the right direction for our county to eliminate homelessness? And please tell us why it is or why it is not, and what would you offer as an alternative?
Thank you so much for the question. I do not think this is the right direction for several reasons. I think it just creates another barrier to those who are on the streets to getting off of the streets. Making it a misdemeanor just is going to make them a lot more self-conscious about their circumstance and is going to make it more difficult for them to potentially receive the help that they need. So instead, I would work with various organizations already trying to get the people who are on the streets off the streets. I would look at the mental health circumstances of these people on the streets to make sure that we can get them the assistance there. I would also take a look at whether or not there's substance abuse and see if we can get them assistance to get off of whatever substance they're on. And then I would take a look at job training programs for these individuals as well. Like you said, we're right next to a lot of different wealthy neighborhoods, and with that, a lot of really thriving businesses. How can we get these people into job training programs so that once they're off the streets, they can stay off the streets? There's also a lot of different ways that I would work to get people off of the streets through more affordable housing. And there's also an example in Austin, Texas, where they just created a community of people who were previously unhoused and put them all in tiny houses. And it's really worked for them. And so I'd like to take a look at how we could sort of recreate something like that here to make it a welcoming space that people want to be a part of. Thank you.
Yes, tenant protections is our last stance against gentrification. Let's take a look at what Supervisor District 4 Slocum passed a resolution in unincorporated parts of San Mateo County. So we've seen what the landlords were exposing our immigrant communities to in unincorporated San Mateo County and Half Moon Bay. There wasn't no move to criminalize those landlords that provide slum conditions to our community. But there was a resolution to criminalize the poor who live in a tent. We need more tenant protections. Gentrification is passing us now, and we have to protect those community members who are barely making it here. We need home buyer programs, not the criminalization of the poor. We need home buyer programs, not the criminalization of the poor. Thank you so much.
Set aside the moral argument of it's wrong to give people handcuffs when they're homeless. Like, let's just put that aside, right? As visceral as that image is, I just don't think it's gonna be effective. Like, if you have somebody who's going through substance abuse, he's a veteran or she's a veteran, is going through all these layers of trauma, racking up misdemeanors doesn't seem it's gonna prove effective. And anything, it's gonna be a barrier to many of the resources they so desperately need. You know, in East Palo Alto, we always emphasize, and it's in our DNA, education over punishment, over eviction. And honestly, it's worked for the last part of our history. We had the first RV safe parking program. Shout out to Pastor Paul Baines and Project We Hope. We had dozens of families who would otherwise have been homeless access good homes. It's about using those tiny homes Celeste mentioned and using county resources to streamline the ministerial and the red tape basically to make those happen. It's about creating navigation centers like the ones in Redwood City. It's about passing Project Home Key, right? But I appreciate the innovation by the supervisors, but to me, I just don't see it's actually going to move the needle. And in government, I'm always concerned about how we're going to get things done. And more importantly, we got to show compassion to these people, the things they've been through, right? The things that they're experiencing. So for me, I respectfully disagree with the decision made, and I would ask us to look at other avenues, alternative pathways to get these people housed. That's the anxiety they have, not getting a misdemeanor.
I think that the Board of Supervisors was trying to be innovative and have solutions for homelessness. However, I don't think that this was the correct one. I think investing in more interim housing like the Navigation Center or Project Home Key is a better avenue, as well as really addressing the root of the cause of what causes people to be homelessness, which is an eviction or poverty, or people lose their jobs, or are in a mental health crisis, or go down a different journey. I think that as the county of San Mateo, we need to do better in providing services and addressing all of these issues, not just focusing on addressing how can we get the homeless out of the streets. I think it's working together. And if I was supervisor and that ordinance came to me, I would have asked the question of, did any of you go and talk to the homeless community? What do they think? What was the conversation like? Is there any partnership with that community, or were people just overlooking them? I think we need to work together, not create divisions amongst each other.
Again, a great question. I don't think that the board was trying to be malicious, but I wasn't there. I didn't read their packet. You have a staff packet where you have information to look at. But what I can do is tell you what we've done in East Palo Alto and things, the way that we've looked at the homeless. We had in our Bell Street Park, where we had the homeless during COVID who had taken over the park, and that's where they lived. We provided wraparound services. It is important to make sure that you're going into the park. First, they had to make sure they made contact, that the homeless people felt comfortable. And then once, like, what is the issue? Again, is it a mental health crisis? Do they need a job? What are the issues and the needs that they need? Wrap them with those services to help them. Then putting together those housing options. Tiny homes may be one thing, but rapid rehousing. And then with that, we were able to make sure that each person that was in the park found housing. The Navigation Center is going to be important as well. It's finding those processes and those opportunities to really evaluate. And then we know that the governor has Prop 1 that will be on the March 5th ballot, where it is deemed to create 1,100 beds for mental health, the veterans, and for homeless, and create slots that will help to address the needs for those who are suffering from mental health. Supporting those type of programs that will give the assistance is going to be the way to go.
You all have the opportunity for a 30-second rebuttal, starting with Paul. Paul, farther away from the microphone, please.
As a rebuttal, oil pipelines are no good. I've worked with many of you in this room on the school to prison pipeline, which was no good. Homelessness to prison pipeline is the same as the oil pipeline. It is no good for the community. It's a humanitarian issue. It's not a criminal issue to be poor. Thank you.
One thing I'll add is that it's important to also look at, right now in San Francisco with the homelessness crisis, there's an effort been pushed by Mayor Breed to look at the Supreme Court decision. The Supreme Court is going to decide on this factor of how and in what ways cities can displace or evict or get rid of, however you want to put it, homelessness people. One of the conversations I had with a gentleman in Redwood Shores today as a landlord is making sure those housing vouchers are effective. Many times they're given vouchers, but either the bed's already been taken or it's too far from them. So making sure that as we're doing those wraparound services, that we have the follow through to make sure it's within that person's reach. Very important.
I agree that we need to look at innovative ideas to address some of these issues, perhaps more of a partnership. I currently learned that San Diego has an organization that works with the homeless population, and in order to get services, you must have your, in order to get services for your pet, you must get the services as a homeless member. So that's something where you can work together and create community and be innovative, as well as making sure that we are updating our homeless prevention system in the county of San Mateo in order to move us forward.
Again, I think this is an opportunity to partner with nonprofits who are doing the work. We know that Life Moves is in the county and they're doing the work. They're on the ground working with this population that we're addressing. Additionally, we have Project We Hope. It's having that opportunity to address the need and be in the community to solve the issues and answer the questions for those who are struggling to find housing.
So I think that we also need to take baby steps before we solve this issue as a whole. And I think one of those things could be working obviously with the nonprofits who are already doing the work, but also making sure there's resources for people who need them, like hygiene hubs, places where they can wash themselves, wash their clothes. There's also a lot of children in schools who are not able to wash their clothes before they go to school, or they might be in between homes and things like that. So these types of services are important not only for the unhoused, but also for the wider community who might be having some housing instability as well. Thank you.
Next question for you. So as 90-second answers, as the supervisor for District 4, you are the direct government for all of the unincorporated areas, including North Fair Oaks and some areas of Menlo Park. As such, how are you going to make sure that you are representing those areas well? And Antonio gets to start. No, sorry, Paul.
So as supervisor, I will represent everyone well. I do not believe in leaving anyone behind, whether you're wealthy or you're poor, you're older, you're younger, it doesn't matter. I want to represent everyone. These unincorporated areas need assistance. They are flooding. Every time there's rain, tomorrow it will be flooded. We are now incarcerating community members in these unincorporated areas where it will be flooding tomorrow. So as it begins to flood tomorrow, let's think about those people that we are leaving behind, because we are not assisting them by slapping handcuffs on senior citizens or unhoused youth. We are making the problem worse, and we are going down the wrong path. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the question. I had the pleasure when I was working for State Senator Becker to be a district representative for not just East Palo Alto, but also North Fair Oaks. And even most recently, constantly, I think the key has been empowering those communities to advocate for themselves. That's when true change happens, when the representative is working in tandem with those folks in North Fair Oaks. And in my conversations with many of those business members or merchants, it's giving them the stimulus and the financial support to be able to have their businesses, right? That strip in Middlefield, how are we gonna fix that? How are we gonna push the federal and state government and our county to really get that project, that road up and running? I think it's also gonna be about setting up regular office hours, right? Pressing the flesh, as a former city manager once said. It's important that people see you in the community when you show up to the events, show up at the Zumba sessions, showing up at the picnics. Like that to me is the most important foundation. And it's also, once again, about working with the nonprofits, the incubators, the folks doing the work and understanding what those exact needs are.
I think working with the nonprofits, it's key. There's a lot that's in common in all the unincorporated areas of District 4. Those communities have a lot in common. Being the kind of supervisor that meets people where they're at. So having set time where I'm not expecting the members of North Fair Oaks, members of Bellhaven, or other members of Menlo Park to come to my office hours, but it's me going to them and going to where they already have a following, where they are already with a trusted partner, like the Casa Círculos of our community, the PALs, et cetera. It's really about creating that bridge. And I am happy to say that I created that bridge when I was working as a legislative aide for the district. That was a big role of what I did, was get community input and bring it back to the supervisor. But in this case, I won't be sending my aide. I will be the one that's there.
Again, I think it's important to ensure that we're providing culturally competent communications, getting into the community, and I agree, not being in your office, but getting into the community so people understand. And when you schedule the meetings, schedule meetings in a time that when people who have a job can participate. Oftentimes we have meetings in the middle of the day, people are working, and how do you participate? Then when you come to a meeting, if it's in the evening and you have a family, provide childcare. Make sure that there's going to be food available. Remove the barriers to families to participating in those events. But again, it's going into those communities. East Palo Alto was once an unincorporated area. I know what happened to us. We were once 11 square miles. We are now 2.5 square miles. And if we hadn't become a city, I don't know that we would be here. So making sure that we're having conversations, people are feeling heard. Those are the things that I will work on to make sure that when if I'm elected as a Board of Supervisors.
I just want to reiterate, one of the reasons why I'm running for this position is because I live in North Fair Oaks, and I noticed that there's a lot of lack of service. We have power lines that haven't been addressed. We have flooding that will come tomorrow and stay for the next few weeks. And we have, I was just talking to somebody in the audience, there's at the park that I live across the street from doesn't even have lights. So the kids who go to play basketball there at 4:30 in the winter are playing basketball in the dark. So we really need to be cognizant of the challenges that these community members are facing, and living in this community is giving me a great perspective on the issues that are facing them. And I have a report in front of me that says areas with median income below the minimum required for basic needs. And guess what's highlighted? North Fair Oaks, because we're not giving them the services and the attention that they need because they don't have the representation that is required to make sure that they're being looked after. So I am, again, a huge advocate of open communication and transparency with these communities. So being out there in these communities, being available, implementing tools like Civic Bell so that people can communicate with you in real time when it's convenient for them, and making them feel welcome as a part of the process.
Thank you. I'm going to remind you not to get too close to the microphone and not to be too fast. I know I've been saying that a lot of times, but we really want to make sure that this is as accessible as possible. Now we get to do the fun things, another fast round. So if everybody's ready, and we've been sitting still for a long time, so at least we'll get some fast talking happening. The first question with Antonio starting, I think, is what will be your one top priority, you only have 30 seconds, in your first year as supervisor?
Look, since Roe v. Wade was overturned in June of 2022, there have been over 65,000 pregnancies that came from rape. And for me, I think it's so critical before we address housing, before we address all these issues that we need to address. How is the county going to continue to be a vanguard and a defense against this abortion ban that's happening across these red states? We need to invest in Planned Parenthood. We need to provide prenatal, reproductive care for women and other folks to make sure they have the resources they so desperately deserve. In this 2024 critical election, we're seeing rights being rolled back. We have to be a defense against that.
I want to recognize that there's a lot to be worked on in your first year, but one of my priorities will be to update the San Mateo County's first-time home buyer program that hasn't been updated in a while. Our community members don't qualify because in order for you to qualify for this program, you have to purchase a house in San Mateo County that is around $900,000. Well, of course, as you are all laughing, the median price range is well above $1 million. That needs to be updated soon. And if I'm elected as your next supervisor, I will make it a priority so that we can keep our community in the district.
As a grandmother, one of my key priorities is childcare. I watch my grandson and my daughter figure out where he's going to go. The first few years are so important, and not having adequate childcare can be the barrier to participating in the workforce and staying housed. We need to create spots. We need to make sure that in that office, how do you license the mom and pop shops so to make sure that they can provide the space? Right now, there are not enough spots for childcare within our community and region, and we need to make a difference with that.
So for me, it's climate policies, and those touch a lot of different areas, but that's green spaces, that's reinforcing our sewage systems, which doesn't sound very fun, but it's very important, and that's also improving a myriad of things. But for me, climate policies are very important, and I would make sure to integrate them in various areas, because I feel like people don't fully sometimes understand that that really impacts every aspect of your life. And so that's what I would focus on.
Vacant office spaces. I'm going after those spaces so that we can secure and provide the basic needs of society for our seniors and our youth. I believe wasting and investing as much money as possible in housing is extremely important, because the road we're headed down right now, we have no foster homes, and we're about to start striking out senior citizens and youth for living on the street. I believe it's unfair, so those office spaces, I am shooting for those to create permanent housing, not temporary housing, not sheltered housing, permanent housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Maggie, what's your favorite park in District 4?
I'm glad you asked that question, because as a child that I grew up in District 4, we don't have the parks that we deserved. The parks there either don't have lights, they're not family friendly, sketchy stuff is going around. So my park growing up was Garfield, which was the school that I went to. I was lucky enough if it was open and we could go play soccer. But there's a Friendship Park in North Fair Oaks that I think that could be upgraded a lot more. So I just want to recognize that.
Thank you. Lisa?
So I actually have two. One is in East Palo Alto, and it's Martin Luther King Park. When we were growing up, my brothers played baseball there, and it was live with community members and families watching the young people play sports. But as I've been walking in Redwood City, I've come to really love Red Morton Park for the very reasons. It's an active park. Shakespeare in the park, you see families, you see sporting events. That is the way to activate a park.
I feel like I've already locked in this answer by making that one of my favorite memories. So I'm going to say Red Morton Park as well. And I do think it's a great model for how we can really create those types of community spaces more robustly throughout the district.
I live down the road from Stolzaf Park. I love hiking, but I'm a skater. I ride my skateboard at the skate park at Red Morton. I ride my bicycle there. I take my German Shepherds there. We have Easter, birthday parties there. And my mother-in-law, you cannot get her out of that senior center. So I have to pick Red Morton Park. Thank you.
This one's bittersweet, but I would say Jack Farrell in East Palo Alto. The Ravenswood League plays there all the time. And I'm really proud of the city's leadership in putting cameras in the parks after we lost a great gentleman by the name of Ralph Fields. I want to honor lift up his name today. And for me, to your point, Maggie, how can we create smart lights and create infrastructure? I also want to shout out to Devontae Adams, East Palo Alto's own very own, by the way, who put in his own money and effort to create outdoor public gyms for our kids to play with. And I'm really proud of that kind of partnership. That's what we should see more in District 4.
Excellent. Now starting with Lisa, what is one word, I repeat, one word to describe your leadership style?
Integrity.
Collaborative.
Resiliency.
Energetic.
Committed.
Okay, I just want to compliment all of you because I know that was really hard. Just one word, but thank you for doing it. Really appreciate the respect on that one. And then the last question on this fast round is a little bit of a give me here, but we represent a lot of nonprofits. There are a lot of nonprofits in the room. And what we really want to know is how will you commit to engaging with nonprofits on an ongoing basis? Celeste is first.
Okay, so I come from the world of nonprofits, and I'm working with a few of the nonprofits already in the area. So I will commit to working with nonprofits because that's my platform. I am running to connect nonprofits to government and use higher educational institutes as well and businesses to really create a holistic and collaborative approach to the issues that are facing our community. I love the passion of people who work in nonprofits, and I love the focus, so it would be my pleasure to work with all of you.
Thank you. I am a co-founder of a nonprofit named Re-Evolution. I'm also co-founder of a nonprofit 501c4 that we all co-founded together with the community, Fixin' San Mateo. We bring solutions to the problems in San Mateo County, just not for the district, the entire district. Thank you.
And I tip my hat to the leadership of Fixing San Mateo and all the nonprofits that work on our behalf. Well, first, we got to stop the turf wars of sending out Measure K funding and having 300 nonprofits compete with each other. I mean, I think that's kind of crazy. So we got to restructure that and make it so that you're not taking 16 and a half hours to get 20,000 maybe, right? Like, we got to stop that piecemeal approach. We have to aggressively invest in it and have more easy categories so that when you're doing First Five or you're in the Boys and Girls Club, you're not worrying about a grant writer. You're not worrying about getting the funding or missing the NOFA Act. So that's how we're going to do it.
When I used to work at the County of San Mateo, I would attend these meetings called NRT, which were called Neighborhood Response Team. And it was just a collaboration of many people that were working for the unincorporated area of District 4. I would like to propose for having something similar where we get everybody in the table, including the supervisor, to work together and see also like where we're collaborating. We're all working for the same community. We're all trying to accomplish the same things. But there's always a lot of repetitive work. Like, we can do one survey instead of surveying our entire community and exhausting them in the participation.
Nonprofits, my hat goes off to you. You're doing the work of many governments where we cannot fill the holes and the gaps. It is because of your work that our residents are being taken care of. I will make sure that there's an open door policy and where we can have conversations. I lead a couple of nonprofits as the chair, and I know the importance of having support from leadership. So again, there's an open door policy, understanding the needs, and how do we make sure that we're getting you the resources that you need so that you can be successful.
So one more 30-second question, and then we're going to move to closing statements. This next question is about emergency services. There are definitely gaps in emergency services in San Mateo County. What's your top priority into addressing this issue?
Yes, majority of our emergency response personnel can't afford to live here. 70% of our fire department lives in Sacramento. So tomorrow when there's an atmospheric river, if we need help, we have to wait for our fire department to get here from Sacramento. This is the same situation that our sheriff's department is in and our police department. I believe that we need to make San Mateo accessible to everyone, and that means everyone. Thank you.
Not having the Half Moon Bay shooting happen ever again. Having people that speak the language, and not just Spanish, but Tagalog, Vietnamese, Mandarin, Cantonese in the north, right? Like, we have to represent the beautiful diversity of this county. And frankly, at this stage, we do not. So it's important that we work with those different agencies to make sure that happens.
Making sure that we're also offering classes to residents where we can help our community prepare for disaster preparedness, like bring more CERT classes, as well as making sure that we're addressing filling those vacancies that was mentioned. And that's why I really want to go back to that priority that I had of updating that first-time home buyer program so that we can help those that are serving our community buy a home here. I spent a day with deputies and firefighters throughout the last couple of weeks, and many said that they don't want to rent here. They want a permanent housing for their families. So
I represent East Palo Alto right now on the San Mateo County Emergency Council Board. It is important that we have residents sign up for the SMC alerts so that when an accident or something happens, you're aware of it in time. That is probably the most important thing that we can do around this, and then understanding what are the challenges in your neighborhood. Are you near a creek? How are you going to get out? If there's a fire, how do you get out? What are the access routes? But again, if I said anything, have you signed up for the SMC alerts? And if you haven't, you should.
In talking with some of the first responders in the community, there's a real gap in resourcing and allocation of where they need to go as well. So not only is it preparing citizens with the emergency response in the languages that they can understand, but actually listening to the first responders and what they need and making sure that where there are gaps in what they have to provide as a service, we find ways to mitigate those. My husband worked as an EMT. Even small things like making sure you have a paramedic when you need a paramedic can really be important in saving lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we're now going to closing statements, and we are actually going to start with Celeste to make it fair. You have 60 seconds.
Thank you all so much for coming out tonight, and thank you for all the work that you nonprofits do. I know that it's hard work and for little pay a lot of times, so I really appreciate everything that you do. I hope that I've made it clear tonight that it is my main goal as the representative to pull together the resources between the nonprofits, government, higher education, and the businesses in the area to do the work that needs to be done in this community. We can no longer rely on good enough solutions for problems that are going to keep coming up. We need to work with one another to come up with innovative solutions to the problems that we're facing. And to do that, we need to collaborate with one another. We need to have an open communication between those who are elected and those in the community. And I know that with my background and my personality, I'm the best person to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me tonight. I represent change. That is what I want. Not change to say that what hasn't worked for everyone won't continue to work, but we need to start representing for everyone. There's an imbalance. We're up here speaking today about programs we need to create to keep community members here. That means there is an imbalance in our leadership. Programs have missed us. What I want to do is I would like to bring programs back to the people so that we can all live equally and so that our government serves us equally. Right now, that's not the case with the criminalization of the poor. That is going backwards as a society. We cannot continue to incarcerate the mentally ill, the addicted, and now the poor. I think that we need change, and I believe that my leadership in this county, with all of the issues I have tackled across the county, school to prison pipeline, ICE ordinance, work with my community for civilian oversight, which is not done yet. We need that type of leadership. Bridging communities is what I do. Thank you so much.
We have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to elect the supervisors, not only going to present the issues of today, but is going to be able to tackle the issues of tomorrow. Look, I got skin in the game, y'all. I still live with my mama. We can't afford to live here. That's just straight up the problem. And for me getting in government was precisely because it's not working for those people, those Black and brown, low-income folks, and everyone who have been historically relegated to the bottom of the socioeconomic ladder. We're here to work for everybody, the west and east side of El Camino. But we also have to recognize, as Sandra Cisneros eloquently says, this house is burning and the people in it are doing that. This house is burning and the people in it are suffering. And so for me, I'm proud to be in this field alongside my folks in this race. I've been on council for 4 years. I got elected during a once-in-a-century pandemic. Been proudly endorsed by a number of local electeds, including former member Giselle Hill, Supervisor Corzo, Supervisor Canepa, and I'm proud to say, as of this week, Attorney General Rob Bonta. I'm here to represent not only what's going on in government, but also listen to your concerns, and you darn well believe I will fight for you. Thank you.
Thank you for being here, your questions, and for putting this together. During this campaign, a common response from District 4 residents is that they want to see new leadership and a fresh perspective, which is what I bring to the table. I'm the daughter of Mexican immigrants, and I'm the only candidate that has worked at the Board of Supervisors as a legislative aide for this district. My background ensures that I am the candidate who will get the job done from day one. I actively took on a wide range of responsibilities as a legislative aide, and that has allowed me not only to bring my personal experience, but also develop a professional experience with District 4. I am here because this is my community, because I want to give back to the district that raised me, because I want to make sure that our next generation and this generation is set up for success. I've been endorsed by Sheriff Christina Corpus, Supervisor Noelia Corzo, East Palo Alto Council Member Ruben Abrica, Redwood City Council members Elmer Martinez and Chris Sturkin, and many other leaders. I would love to connect with you all more, and hopefully we can talk some more after this. Thank you.
Thank you for your time and thank you for listening. Again, I have been an elected official now for 11 years. I've served 3 terms on the East Palo Alto City Council, served as mayor and vice mayor 3 times each. I am an executive within an organization that has impact on an innovation economy. I come to the seat ready, prepared to take this seat, and I have been endorsed by Congresswoman Anna Eshoo, the incumbent Warren Slocum, Senator Josh Becker, Assemblymember Diane Pappin, Assemblymember Mark Berman. I've had the sole endorsement for the San Mateo County Democratic Committee. I have the sole endorsement for the Labor Council. I've been endorsed by Ask Me 829, SEIU, and SEIU 2015. I bring experience to the seat, and I will be ready to go at day one. I hope that you believe in me and my leadership, and I hope to have the opportunity to represent District 4 as the next Board of Supervisors.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. We're going to say something that has probably never been said at a candidate forum. We actually ran ahead of schedule. So we really want to thank you all for coming. Thank you for your thoughtful answers. Thank you for really reflecting on your experiences in District 4 and for being here tonight. We'd like to thank the community members as well for joining, as well as those on Zoom. We really feel that these events are important to make sure that you are well informed about the variety of candidates we have running and their views, and an incredibly strong slate of candidates. So I hope you got to know them a bit better tonight. And on behalf of Leadership Council San Mateo County and the Thrive Alliance, we thank you all for being here. And I'm sure our candidates would be happy to stay around and talk a bit more with all of you, and for all of you to also meet each other.